Welcome, thank you. I'm so grateful that you're all here. My name is Candace Hossenegger. I'm the director at the Division of Water Resources, and really excited to kick off the State Water Plan Water Talk here in Vernal, in the Basin. Always happy to be here with you guys. So I'm curious, I'm gonna do a little bit of public participation because I love public participation, is how did you use water this morning?
Brush my teeth.
Someone brushed their teeth. Dang.
Changed my wheel lines too.
You changed your wheel lines. Yep. What else did you guys do?
Watered cattle and horses.
Okay, so watered some cattle and horses.
I drove through puddles and got mud on my truck.
Okay, someone drove through puddles and had to go wash his truck. Someone showered, washed dishes. What else?
Consumed it.
You drank some water probably one way or another. What about, did anybody eat food? Did anybody charge their cell phone last night? Turn on a light switch this morning, right? Water is such a critical piece of our society that sometimes we take it for granted, from the clothes we wear to the water we drink and even the chairs we sit on. You know, water was involved in it. So really grateful for you guys taking the time to come out here to share with us your perspectives on water. I would love to introduce Stephanie McGinnis. She is our State Water Plan Manager, and she's gonna she will lead us through the presentation for the evening and kind of set up the path forward. So thanks.
Thank you, Candace, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is a really great turnout, so thank you. And I want to say thank you to all of you that are joining us online. You know, it's certainly not lost on me that there are many ways you could spend your evening, and so we really do value you taking the time to join us for this. Just to give you all a little bit of just kind of a rundown of how the evening will work, I'll give you all just a short presentation here, about 20 to 25 minutes. For those of you that are online, you've probably already noticed that you're unable to ask questions or make comments. However, there will be a survey at the end of this presentation, so you can provide feedback there. There also will be an email where you can follow up if you have any specific questions for us. And those of you that are here in the room, you're also welcome to take that survey or email us, but we do hope that you'll take the time to stick around for about 45 minutes to an hour to just share with us what your concerns are when you think about water here locally. And so we'll take about an hour and a half, so we'll plan to be wrapping up around 7 o'clock. So again, we hope that you'll stick with us for that. And before we get started, I want to just give a big thank you to the Watershed Council, the Uintah Watershed Council. They have already been really instrumental in helping us to shape what we should be including in the state water plan to represent, you know, statewide issues, but also issues here locally. And I also want to say thank you to the Uintah Water Conservancy District and the Duchesne County Water Conservancy District. William and Clyde have both been instrumental in helping to secure this venue. So we really appreciate them facilitating us having the opportunity to hold the meeting here with you all. And I want to start out by talking about what the Division of Water Resources mission is. You know, our mission is to plan, conserve, develop, and protect Utah's water resources. And the state water plan, it certainly falls under that mission. And it really does take just about our entire village at the division to develop the state water plan. From our staff that are collecting and analyzing data, to the staff that some of you have already met here this evening to help facilitate this meeting, to our staff that are helping to write sections. And it's bigger than a Division of Water Resources. We're working with our sister agencies to help draft content and direct the state water plan. We're also working at the local level. So with the local conservancy districts, with our local watershed councils, and of course, we're here this evening to hear from you all on what you would like to see included in the state water plan. So this evening, I'll give you an overview of what we're planning to include in the water plan, you know, and I think just as important, what the state water plan is not. We'll talk about why it matters, and you know, we'll also talk about how you can help shape the plan, not just this evening, but how you can stay involved in the process throughout. And the purpose of the state water plan is to provide an overview of current water resources and also outline strategies and actionable steps at the individual, local, and state levels to help us address current challenges, but also prepare us for future uncertainties. And my hope is that the plan will serve as a strategic framework to guide those that are, making these decisions to shape and manage our water, and also to help those of us that are dependent on the water here in our state. And I want to just take a moment to talk about planning over the years. The first truly comprehensive state water plan, this was published in 1990, and we've had 2 iterations of the plan since. But certainly, planning goes back way beyond that. And as we look at the focus of the plan over time, it's kind of interesting to see how the shift in focus has changed. And to me, that just really illustrates the point that the water landscape that we're living in, it isn't static. Our challenges, our needs are always changing. And so we see that as we sort of look back. So the 1948 plan, which I also think has the coolest cover of them all, this wasn't a full-blown state water plan, but this document, it was really focused on development, increasing storage, and getting water to where it was needed. The 1963 plan, this was still pretty focused on storage and moving water to where it was needed. The 1990 plan, and again, this was the first truly comprehensive state water plan, we start to see a bit of a shift in the focus. So there are entire sections that are devoted to water pollution, the importance of fisheries and other aquatic life, and it also acknowledges water conservation as a necessary tool to manage our resources. Now, the second state water plan, this was published in 2001, and this plan, and I think we probably all already knew this, but it really calls out the fact that we live in a semi-arid climate and that we need to recognize that as we plan for the future. And in the most recent plan, it kind of continues along that theme, and it also acknowledges that we're starting to see a change in long-term weather trends. So this will be, a concern that we keep in mind as we're developing this next iteration of the state water plan. And in recent years, we've seen an increase in the frequency and severity of drought. This is a map from the US Drought Monitor, and it's showing the percent of time in weeks from 2000 through 2019 that each state has been in some level of drought. And so to count as a week of drought for the state, at least half of the state must be in some level of drought. And we can see during this 20-year period, and I'll help you out because I know that legend down there on the bottom left is pretty small. You can say we aren't that dark, deep red like Arizona, but we're that next level up. And what that's indicating is that Utah is spending about 40 to 50% of the time in drought conditions. So essentially over that 20-year period, and I imagine we could safely extend that through current day, around half of the year, at least half of the state is in some level of drought. And of course, we all have and continue to have concerns regarding the dwindling amount of water that's available for storage in the Colorado River Basin. This is a picture of Lake Powell in 2021. And at that time, this was a new historic low since it started filling back in the 60s. And then the reservoir hit another record low the next summer and the next summer. Does anyone know what level the reservoir is at right now? What's that?
25 to 30.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I haven't checked for a few weeks, but I was down in Page about 3 weeks ago, and it's about 26% full. So, this is something that really should be kind of waking us up when we think about how do we manage our water resources. And I imagine some of you in the room have maybe heard about the problems that the Great Salt Lake is experiencing right now as well. And, again, the water landscape that we live in, it isn't static. So we need to thinking about these challenges. And I certainly don't want to paint this doom and gloom picture this evening, because from these challenges come opportunities. Developments in science and how we collect data, they can help us to better understand how to adapt to changing conditions and also help us better manage our water resources. And this up here is just an example, Airborne Snow Observatory, or ASO for short. This is technology that allows for aerial surveys that can determine the snow depth across a large area. So an entire basin and an entire watershed. And maybe more important than snow depth, it can determine the snow water equivalent or SWE in that snow. So how much water is in that snow? And traditionally we've obtained our snowpack information from snowpack telemetry or SNOTEL sites. And those are really amazing at giving us these point estimates. But this can allow us to look at that larger spatial area and determine exactly how much water is piling up in our mountains over the winter. And the division is currently involved in a multi-year pilot study to determine if this sort of technology might be a great path forward for us. And then before I move on, this is a really great time to point out a couple of things that the plan is not. I wish I were, but it is not a guarantee of water. And the state water plan is also not a regulatory document. The Division of Water Resources is not a regulatory agency. However, past recommendations, they show that, in the last plan, there were goals and objectives, and a lot of them, about 80%, have come to fruition. So even though this isn't a regulatory document, this is something where we'll be recommending, a path forward. And my hope is this will influence, one of the key target audiences is our legislators. So being able to hand this document over so they can have this information in their hands. And then I also want to touch on why it matters to you all and to me. Water affects us all, whether it's water from your tap, irrigation from your farms. What else? What are some other reasons water is important to y'all?
For all of us, but recreation.
Yeah, recreation, absolutely. So keeping our watersheds, our rivers, our lakes healthy for recreation, which is, we'll talk about that. I mean, it's fun to play in the water, but it's also an economic component for a lot of our communities. Yes.
A lot of people out here wouldn't know their neighbors unless they fought over water with them.
It's good to fight over. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we all have different perspectives and opinions on why water is important, but you all wouldn't be here tonight if water wasn't important to you. So I want to get down into the details a bit of the plan. We'll have a total of 9 chapters, and this evening we'll drill down into chapters 2 through 8 a bit. So chapters 2, 3, and 4, I see these as the chapters that outline kind of what the limiting or constraining factors are when it comes to how much water we have in our state and what we can do with that water. And then within those constraints or those sideboards, how do we support our watersheds and ecosystems, our communities, and our agriculture, chapters 5, 6, and 7. And we'll also have a chapter that discusses the unique challenges and needs within the 11 basins here in Utah, as well as the unique opportunities and successes within those basins. So I want to start diving into each of the chapters just a bit, give you a kind of a high-level overview. And so chapter 2, this will provide an overview of Utah's water constraints. So for example, we only receive so much precipitation here in Utah, and that's what we have to work with. The plan will explain how supply and use are measured, as well as provide a current water budget that details our current supply and use. And this figure up here, this is kind of busy, but this is just an example of what our team can do with those data. So you'll see on the top left, it says diversions by basin. So that's water that's diverted from a water body for human use. And on the top right, you'll see depletion. So how much of that diverted water is used and now it's not available for use. And then on the bottom right, you'll see return flow, which is probably what you assume it to be. It's water that's been diverted, but is returned back to a water body. And these are really key pieces of information if you're trying to manage water at the state level, at the local level. And so this is just an example, and our hope is that we'll do something like this for each of the basins, which I think will be really interesting to compare among the basins, kind of what these different components are. Chapter 3, this will focus on drivers of change that affect Utah's water supply and demand, such as changes in climate and population. We've certainly seen more frequent and severe droughts across the state in recent years, and Utah's population in a lot of areas is growing pretty rapidly. And so both of these trends can create some uncertainty for our water future. So it's really important that we have a roadmap of how we prepare for and adapt to these drivers of change. And this chapter will also highlight how improvements in technology and conservation can help us adapt to a changing water landscape, as well as how shifts in policy and management might improve our ability to adapt whether that be at the state or the more local level. And chapter 4, this will focus on how water is administered in Utah. So we'll cover who does what at the state, regional, and local levels. So this will include state agencies like the Division of Water Resources, all the way down to the local irrigation companies. Each has a specific role in planning, developing, regulating, or delivering water. We'll highlight some of the key laws and agreements that shape water use in Utah, including interstate compacts that allocate river flows between states. We'll talk about court decrees that are important. We'll discuss water rights and allocation, including federally reserved water rights, which includes tribal rights. And we'll touch on innovations in water administration, such as the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan, or UWIP. And the idea is to improve coordination and funding for water infrastructure projects across the state. How many of you are familiar with UWIP here in the room? Just a couple? Are y'all just being shy? Yeah, and so I think some of you will start hearing more about the UWIP. Again, this is fairly new, but this will be continuing on into the future. So again, within these sideboards outlined in chapter 2, 3, and 4, how do we support our environment? How do we support our communities and our agricultural producers? And I want to talk high level about what will be included in the plan, but I also want to highlight some water resource challenges that are relevant here at the local level. So chapter 5, this will emphasize the importance of protecting our watersheds and highlight the services that they provide. Healthy watersheds provide a multitude of services, such as maintaining and improving water quality. They increase the ability to store water. They can help mitigate the effects of flooding. And healthy watersheds, they also provide a lot of important habitat, which is a key factor in supporting and maintaining biodiversity. And we already talked about this, but a lot of us like to play in our watersheds. And as I said before, this is a major economic benefit to many of our communities. We'll also address the major threats that our watersheds face. Pollution and invasive species are two major ones that we'll cover. And pollution's got a multitude of sources and negative influences within a watershed, affecting water quality for aquatic life and human use. And invasive species, both plants and animals, they can crowd out natives, they can disrupt ecosystems, they can affect not just the quality of water, but also the quantity of water. And one of the big problems with invasive species is oftentimes once they've established themselves in a system, it's difficult to impossible to eradicate them. And then that in turn can be an economic cost or negative to a community. We'll also highlight some management plans that are already in place to protect our native species, especially those that are listed as threatened or endangered. And to me, at the end of the day, if we don't have healthy watersheds, it's really difficult to support our communities and our agricultural producers. So I want to jump into chapter 6 on vibrant communities, clean drinking water, supporting growth and development, ensuring safe and reliable infrastructure. These are all important to ensure that our communities are resilient. So we'll cover the importance of long-term planning to ensure our water resources are ready to support areas with a growing population. We want to ensure that our economic opportunities are set up for success. Certainly as we see an increase in energy development, especially geothermal and other alternative energy sources. And we also want to have a strategy in place to seize on future opportunities, such as hosting the upcoming 2034 Olympics. And we'll dive into the details of how we can better manage demand by growing water wise through the use of smart water technology, things like smart irrigation timers. We'll dive into all of the different rebate programs and incentives and educational workshops that are available to Utahns to make water wise decisions. And we'll highlight the positives of metering secondary water connections, as well as the positives of implementing tiered water rates that reward conservation efforts. And I probably don't need to tell this crowd, but the saying goes, in Utah, we're either in drought or we're preparing for the next one. So we'll outline how the drought response plan helps us to monitor and respond to drought in our communities. And just as we're looking at how we can better manage demand, we'll also look at how we can expand and optimize our supply through planning for repair and replacement of aging infrastructure, development of new infrastructure, and implementing projects that focus on things like water reuse or aquifer storage and recovery or water loss control. And then the final chapter that I'd like to discuss before we highlight some basin specifics is productive agriculture. Ag is the cornerstone of Utah's identity and economy, and the state water plan is supporting farmers and ranchers by identifying grant programs and other financial opportunities to improve operations, as well as identifying ways to use water more efficiently, all while we're preserving agricultural lands and traditions. So we'll highlight opportunities like the Agricultural Water Optimization Program. This program, it makes pretty hefty financial investments in modernizing the state's agricultural water systems, and they do this through a competitive grant process. And those funding buckets, they're sort of strategically divided into two prime categories: on-farm projects, and then also canal or irrigation company projects. And the idea is to address water efficiency at every stage of agricultural use. We'll talk about conservation easement programs. These are voluntary legal agreements between a landowner and a qualified organization, such as a land trust or a government agency. And the idea is that they can permanently restrict certain types of development or land use in order to protect specific conservation values. And that could be anything from just preserving agricultural production to preserving open space, protecting water resources. Another big one that we'll touch on is the Agricultural Voluntary Incentive Program. This is an incentive-based program that's offered by the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, or UDAF. And the goal of the program is to assist producers in managing cropland and pasture systems with implementing a wide variety of best management practices, or BMPs. And this will help with improving yield, improving water quality, building soil health. There's a lot of operational goals that can be focused on. So with that, of course, we'll focus on what those best management practices, or BMPs, are. And we'll look at those both on and off farm. And the BMPs for off farm, these are focusing on sort of two core areas: improving the conveyance system and also the measurement and control of water throughout the system. And then on-farm projects, looking at optimizing agricultural water use that focuses on the infrastructure as well as management of crops, soil, irrigation, water application. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, we've been working with the Uintah Watershed Council to identify challenges and needs within the basin. And I've got a few bullet points up here. This is certainly not everything that was identified by the council, but these are some challenges and needs that were pointed out. And so I just invite you to take a minute to read these over and just think about, do these resonate with you? Are there other things that you think about when you think about challenges and needs here locally to you when you think about water? And we'll kind of continue on with these in the next portion of the meeting. For us that are here in the room, we'll kind of break out and have some more detailed discussion, but these are just some things to kind of get your brain kind of working on those. Before we do that, though, I'd like to discuss how you can stay engaged throughout the process. So we're holding meetings just like this across 11 basins. We'll actually finish up next week, and then our team will spend the winter writing. And then next summer, you'll have another opportunity to comment on the state water plan. At that point, we'll have a draft that we feel is a final draft, but we'll kick it out to you all and see if you agree that it is a final draft. And then our goal, which is actually mandated, is to have the next state water plan published by December of 2026. And I'll put these QR codes up again on the final slide, but I just want to talk about receiving email updates if you're interested. This QR code on the left. By signing up, you'll be notified of the public comment period next summer, and we'll also notify you when the final plan is ready in December of 2026. I promise we will not bombard your inbox with, I can't even imagine you receiving more than 4 or 5 emails from us. So please don't be shy to sign up for that. We definitely want you to be aware when you can comment next summer on that final draft. And then the QR code on the right, this will take you to our Watershed Councils page. If you're interested in getting involved with water issues at a more local level, this is a great place to join up with other folks. They meet quarterly, and so if you visit that page, it'll tell you how to join that next Watershed Council meeting and where it will be held. This QR code will also be up on the final slide. Again, those of you that are here in the room We really hope that you will stay and join us for a conversation, but you are welcome to also provide feedback through the survey. And for those of you that are online, we do hope that you'll provide feedback through the survey. It shouldn't take you long. I know there's a lot of survey burnout out there in the world. This should only take you about 5 minutes, maybe 10 if you have a lot to say. And then also on the final slide, and actually you can see it on the bottom of the slide here on the right, that is the email you can reach us at, statewaterplan.utah.gov, and we'd be happy to answer any specific questions that you have. For those of you that are here in the room, just a couple of things. We've got a lot of folks. So what we will do is we'll actually break out. We've got some tables set up, and we might need to drag a few more chairs over or stand behind. But what we'll do in a moment is I'll ask you to pick a table, and we'll go for about 20 minutes at each table, and you can rotate through. These tables are based on kind of those broad topics that I discussed earlier: the healthy watersheds and ecosystems, the vibrant communities, and the productive agriculture. So you can start at a table. After about 20 minutes, we'll tell you you can rotate and move to the next table. And it's kind of interesting. You know, when we were working with the Watershed Council, we started talking about these broad topics, but they all sort of bleed together. So as soon as we start talking about healthy watersheds and ecosystems, something will be identified that also affects our communities and our ag. But we'll kind of start there with those topics, and you can sort of move around. I also want to let you know that we'll be recording. If you've ever had to facilitate a discussion and take good notes at the same time, it's really hard to do. So our staff will actually be recording these. And that's so we can get back to the office and we can run through that transcript and make sure that we don't miss any important points that you all have made. And the last thing that I would like to ask of you all is to just please be kind to each other. As I said at the beginning, you know, you all wouldn't be here if water wasn't important to you. And we all have very different perspectives and opinions on why water is important. So as you're having these conversations at the table, just please respect each other. Before we break out and before everyone starts hopping up, I do want to introduce some of the staff that we have here this evening. You've already met Director Hassenjäger. She introduced me. We also have in the back, we have Carly Payne, our Watersheds Council coordinator, and she will be hosting which table, Carly?
Productive agriculture.
She will be with you at the productive agriculture table, which will be right here. We have Becca Free. She is our state water plan specialist. She's kind of the other, we're kind of a lean and mean team of two that our primary job is to draft the state water plan. And she will be with you at the, I'm guessing, healthy watersheds and ecosystems table. And then we also have Adam Clark. He is our local, you're here local in Vernal, but what is your actual title, Adam?
You mean like HR title or like related?
No, I don't want your, well, I don't, yeah, I think I know your HR title. No, what's your like,
Area planning specialist over the United States.
okay. Well, what else do you do with your,
Most of my work is
Is there
actually
a plan?
GIS.
Okay.
So I work along with the
yeah, a lot of making maps. And so some of his maps will be in the state water plan, and he will be with you at the vibrant communities table. And so Candace and I will also be sort of milling about and having a conversation with you. At some point, we will say, hey, it's about time to rotate, and we'll just move through the tables. So with that, as promised, the QR codes are back up again. Those of you that are joining us online, we really appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And for those of you in the room, once again, thank you so much for joining us. And with that, if you all want to pick a table, and we'll kind of start our conversations, and we'll tell you when it's time to rotate. Thank you. Oh.